Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the People Business. Today, I'm excited to have my next guest, Ben Hatta, on. Ben is a great dude, great human being, film producer, St. Ed's wrestler, University of Pennsylvania wrestler. He's in town today. We're going to go watch some wrestling here in a little bit. We're going to go check out the Ironman, which is the top high school wrestling tournament in the country. And it's here in town in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio. So we're excited. We're going to hang out today. He's doing the podcast. Ben, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm excited. It's funny, we were talking about this earlier. The Ironman wasn't around when I was in high school, so I've never seen it. I've never been to it. Obviously heard of it, but it started the year after I graduated, so I'm excited.
So what year? So Ben is a state champion wrestler for St. Ed's. What year did you graduate?
1994.
1994. Okay. And the Ironman started, the following year?
94, 95 season, I think.
Okay. So you just missed it.
Yeah, by 1 year. Well, I think Barger and one of the other guys that created it, I think, St. Ed's, we had our super quad where we'd bring teams from around the country and wrestle them. And it was like 3 or 4 teams. And we started wrestling, I think, like Team Japan my senior year. And so I think Bill wanted to do something that was just bigger and better than the super quad. So he just made an entire tournament where he brought the best teams in from the country. And I'm bummed I didn't get to compete in it, but I'm also kind of glad because that would have been a tough tournament, man. I would have been scared,
Yeah, it was, it's crazy to think back to that first year. And I wrestled in that first Ironman. And it was Bill's grand idea. And he came up with this. We're going to have the biggest high school, the best high school tournament in the country, and it's going to be right here in our backyard. And we're going to make everyone else come to us. And it happened. And here we are. It's 26 years, 27 years, whatever later, and it's still happening. So
yeah, it's still one of the best in the country too.
In the country. So today is one of the best days if you are a high school wrestling fan in the country because we have here in Ohio the best tournament. So it's exciting. We're going to go see future NCAA champions, probably future Olympians, and it's going to be exciting today. So Ben's in town from New York City. So how long have you lived in New York City?
I actually don't live in the city. I live like 30 minutes north in a city called White Plains. But I've been on the East Coast now since 2012. November of 2011. So it's been 10 years. I've been there for 10 years.
Man, time flies.
I just thought about it. Yeah. So I've been out in New York for 10 years. Before that, I was in Los Angeles for 15 years and then school and back in Ohio.
So obviously Ohio is where your roots are, but you've lived in two of the, where you want to be in the entertainment industry, right? So what was your favorite place? Did you enjoy on the West Coast more? Did you enjoy New York more?
100% West Coast.
Really?
When I left there, I was living in Santa Monica, so I was like, 10 blocks from the water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was, my lifestyle and sort of my job style, there's a lot of times where you're in between, shows or productions, and it just felt like I was on vacation all the time. And growing up in the 80s when we lived in the Midwest in Ohio, a lot of the films, that I was a fan of, they're all in LA,
right.
They're all filmed at like Venice Beach. And, I wanted to be a skateboarder when I was also in high school or in grade school. And so that felt like that's where I wanted to be. And when I had the choice, I chose to go there because of what I wanted to do. But when I got there, that's when it really felt like I was home. It felt like my pace of life, the style of living, it was completely different than the East Coast. It was much slower, but it was also sunny all the time.
Right.
And I think that was one of the things that I realized. I was like, wait, you don't have to grow up in the worst weather possible. You don't have to be in a 30-inch snowstorm. And I realized too that like just that affected my mentality, just waking up. And if it's a beautiful day, that's one less thing I had to worry about. What I was going to wear that day, how the weather was going to affect my commute or anything like that. But then it also helped me when I didn't have a job, when I was looking for jobs. And, you'd have the rest of the day after you've done whatever you could to do your job search, and I'd go to the beach. Wow. And that was just helpful for me in a mindset of like, you don't know what you're doing. I have no leads or direction. I'm kind of out here on my own. but it's nice. It's nice all. So my thing was like, and it's happening now, but I was like, look, if I'm going to be homeless, I'd rather be homeless on the beach than homeless in a city park in 20-degree weather. So I think a lot of people have taken my advice since then, because there's a lot of homeless. There's a big homeless population now.
Yeah,
going out there.
It really is. But it makes sense. I mean,
Hawaii had the same problem, and you think about it. If you have no resources, the less, cumbersome life is, the easier it might be when you're going through other stuff. So that's what I felt like. I was like, if I'm homeless or if I'm jobless or if this is the worst, at least it's nice all the time. That's one less thing I have to think about, And then when I moved to New York, when I immediately moved to New York, I felt that, there's, what's it called? Seasonal depression. It's called SAD, where it's the lack of sunlight, affects your mentality and your positivity and your good vibes. And they have, these light lamps so people can sit in front of them to kind of get some energy from that light. And I felt it the first year that I moved out. Yeah. I mean, I moved out to New York right after Hurricane Sandy.
Okay.
And and then we had a snowstorm, I think, like the weekend I arrived, like 20 inches of snow. Oh, so wow. I came from California where it was like 80 degrees, and all of a sudden I'm like, what am I doing? And I moved for my wife. We were doing a long-distance relationship. And so when I made that move, I'm like, what am I doing? Is this the right thing to do? Like, I just gave up this, paradise area, and now I'm living in, snow again. But, you do crazy things for love, and it's worked out.
We do crazy things for love. I love that. So, and it's true. And I think about the seasonal, like you said, and it's a lack of sunshine, right? And lack of vitamin D. And, and we feel it. I've got one of those light lamps, by the way.
No, and they're good. They're, I didn't understand it, I think, until that first year. And I'm like, why am I don't want to be here. Did I make the right decision? What's going on? Why do I feel like this? And it literally was, I didn't have a job for the first 3 months that I moved out there. And so for that first 3 months, I was just getting my stuff organized and doing whatever, but I was sitting in this apartment that wasn't mine. And, this place had just had a snowstorm, so I'm locked in this place, and I'm just looking around like, what did I do? Why am I so depressed right now? And so I just started Googling, and I was like, oh, there's seasonal depression with lack of sunlight and blah, blah, blah. And what I started to do in order to get over that is I started to embrace the winter. Before I started to run from it. I'm like, I didn't have a proper coat because I didn't have a winter coat for 15 years. So the first thing I did was I bought a nice winter coat that I just felt comfortable in. And that was my wife's advice. You got to get comfortable in this uncomfortableness. And that's sort of what we're going through now. But that was a big sort of eye-opener. Instead of sitting inside complaining about how it sucks outside and it's cold and blah, blah, blah. Let's go snowboarding. Let's go skiing. Let's go sledding. Let's have let's get out and enjoy what we used to, when I was a kid, versus complaining about it and wishing for something that I wasn't going to get back.
Right.
So I made that change mentally probably that first year. But it took a couple months to make that adjustment that like, this is something new for me now,
It is something new for you now because you go, I mean, that transition had to be really hard at first, get it going from that sunshine every single day, that lifestyle. And then it's all of a sudden, because there's so much that goes with the weather, and it's everything else. And we see it every single day, especially here in Northeast Ohio, right? With, we see the sunshine, 4 times a winter maybe. So, but it's funny. The thing you said though, also that was interesting was kind of getting used to that, getting, the uncomfortableness, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, kind of like wrestling, right? In a way, because wrestling is that same, you have to struggle, you have to go through that, and it's uncomfortable all the time. So you have to kind of embrace that to be able to make it work, right?
Yeah, I think one of my coaches actually from high school mentioned that. I think I heard in another podcast, and I think it was right around the time that the pandemic was starting. And it was like, this is one of those moments where you're going to have to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. And as wrestlers, we're used to it. Cutting weight is the prime example of sitting in a sauna. That's the way I looked at it. When the pandemic first started, I was like, this is like when they get the whole team in the sauna and they're like, we're not leaving for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. First one to leave, is a loser. And you sat there and you saw people crack. You saw as soon as the heat and the sweat and the uncomfortability started building and building, who's going to break first? Who's going to run to the door and push out and, get out of that sort of sweat box? And my dad taught me to relax and close your eyes and meditate and just breathe. And in college, I could stay in there for 2 hours sometimes.
Could you really?
Oh, yeah. Well, I had to sometimes because I had that much weight to lose. But I ended up learning to do that and I found myself doing it even after college. A couple of years ago, before the gyms all closed, I'd work out and then I'd go sit in the sauna, and that was a thing of mine. I'd sit in there and I'd just watch everyone else leave after 10, 15, 20 minutes. And my standard was like 30 or 40 minutes in there before, leaving. But if someone came in and I was at 38 minutes, I had 2 more, I would stay in there until that guy left, just to say that I was in there a little bit longer, and that pushing myself mentally of like, enjoy it, enjoy the sweat, enjoy this push. And so when the pandemic hit, that's the way I mentally categorized that in order to help get through it. I've been in this situation before. I hate, you're not comfortable with all these choices that are being made for you, but you have to do them. So make it fun, make it less stressful. Don't think about the things that aren't really the main issues that are going to bog you down and bring more negativity in. So I literally flipped that switch, and it's been almost a year and a half, since March of 20. So I still feel like we're in that sauna. Mm-hmm. And I still feel like I'm in there. I've poked my head out a couple times and caught my breath and I've stepped out, but
right.
I'm still in there, and many people have left already.
Yeah.
So I think it's been for me, the last year and a half has really just been a strong mental test and sort of building that strength up of, if you can do this and you can push through this sort of, crappy situation we're in, and it's been almost 2 years, you can do a lot more things than you think you can. You can be in another uncomfortable situation again and get through it. And if it's not life threatening, then you'll make it out on top. So
yeah, I love that. You made me think, and to elaborate, it's because whether you're a wrestler like you and I or not, it doesn't really matter, but we all have in our history proof that we can overcome adversity and we can gain strength by doing so. It doesn't really matter what the experience is. Maybe you had a goal in the past 5 years ago, you lost 20 pounds and you accomplished that goal. It shows that you can put in the work, you can take the action, you can execute, you can make it happen. So maybe it's a book you wanted to read and you never thought you'd get through it, and you read the book and you made it. So whatever it is, we could all pull strength from past and utilize it to say, I can do this now, whatever that current challenge is, right? That current thing that we're maybe facing, because we all have challenges. You have them every single day, so do I. And life is not easy. When you're in that sauna, question for you, are you competing against them? Meaning I'm going to outlast them, or is it against yourself?
I think it's a combination of probably both.
Okay.
I think it's testing myself to see if I can do it, and I'm going to do it. And then in doing so, I'm going to outlast you.
Okay.
And that's just, I think, more of like, not saying I'm mentally stronger, because even if I'm not, I'm like you said, if you're riding a bike or, you've ridden 10 miles, who says you have to stop at 10? What if you went 11 and then turned around? And then tomorrow you're like, well, I went 11. Let me see if I can go 12.
Yeah.
And so to answer that question, I think it's a combination of both. It's like, I'm going to stay in here longer than this person just to prove to myself that I can. And as that person's now in there for 15 minutes and I was supposed to leave 2 minutes ago, and I'm like, what am I doing? But it becomes a mental challenge for me. Just stay in here for a little bit longer. He's about to crack, this person. And that's what I'm telling myself, that they're going to crack. But what's really happening to me is I'm strengthening my own self. I'm not cracking. This guy's going to crack before I am. But what I'm doing is I'm telling myself, don't crack.
And that's, that is what you have to figure out. We all need to figure out a way to control our mind in some way, because the mind is a tool.
Yeah.
It's not us. It's a tool we can use, and it can help us or it can hurt us. But I love how you push yourself. So going back, because you started this by telling us that your father actually taught you. Did he teach you to meditate?
I think I know that some lessons in my household were that the mind is stronger than the body. The mind can help cure the body. You know, if you're going through something, if you can focus your mind, you can get through it, especially with pain or endurance. But as a kid, we lived on this college campus, and they had a gymnasium, and it was like the local gym, and we would go there and, you know, mess around with our friends. But my dad would go, we'd run off into the gym, and he would go straight to the sauna.
Okay.
He would sit in there the entire time we were there. And so, like, we'd go and we'd play a basketball game for half an hour, and then we'd go play in the racquetball courts, and then we'd run down to the locker room, and we'd open the door, and we'd be like, hey, you ready? And he'd be like, no, give me half hour. So then we'd go and, you know, we'd fool around and, you know, hang out by the vending machines and whatnot and blah, 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 chase each other through the bleachers, and then we'd come back, and he'd still be in there.
Wow.
And so he'd be like, yeah, give me another half hour, blah, blah, blah. So us just checking in on him and seeing that this dude was sweating his brains out in like 200 degrees and just saying, I need more time. And then asking, like, how do you do that? How do you physically do this? And his answer was, I just relax. I clear my mind. I think of something else. I don't think about what I'm going through. I think of something else in my mind that is easier on my mind, you know? So that's, and then when I started doing it in college, because I had to, I flashed back to those moments. I'm like, well, if he could do it, he was an old man, and he was sitting in a sauna, you know, just sweating it out for 2 hours, I can do that. But there was also more of a purpose. Like, I had to do it in order to lose that weight. But in order, you know, when you've lost 20 pounds, you still have 2 more to go, and you have to sit in a sauna for an hour before you even start to break sweat. That is, I think, where that mental sort of fortitude kicked in. And it's just like, you know, I don't even really know. I think it's just more of that motivation. Just keep going.
Right.
Just keep going. You know.
Just keep pushing. Go 5 more.
Yeah.
You know, just keep.
Yeah. You sit there. You're rocking a lot. You know.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of rocking and, you know, carding yourself off so the sweat's not on there all the time. But you know, it's I wouldn't recommend it. You know, unless you're hydrating yourself constantly. But so that, to me, it's also a lot easier now to do that because I'm fully hydrated.
Because you're fully hydrated.
100%.
Yeah. I was having a conversation online on Facebook the other day with a former wrestler, and we talked about sauna suits because I had a sauna suit on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I never wear one of those ever again. And,
traumatic.
Yeah. But I understand that, but it's an actually enjoyable experience when you're fully hydrated.
Right.
Right. And you use, you know, but not when you're completely dehydrated and you're putting them on. It's a different story. I want to talk about your dad because we've went down there. So tell our audience about your father. He was basically like your family brought wrestling to Japan, correct?
Yeah, my grandfather did.
Your grandfather brought wrestling to Japan. So can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. So my dad's side of the family is actually from Japan. They're Japanese, and my grandfather was big into judo.
Okay.
And he, the founder of judo, Dr. Kano, this Japanese man, I think my grandfather was his secretary for the entire judo organization. And in the late 20s, they decided to send a team of judo fighters to America in a friendly exchange, to go and compete against other universities, other military branches in wrestling, grappling, and sort of a judo combination. And so my grandfather was on this team that came over. I think there was initially like 5 or 6 guys, and they would just go from university or to an Air Force base or something like that and then compete against these guys. And my grandfather started noticing that the wrestlers, because they would put wrestlers up against these judo fighters, and the wrestlers were winning.
Okay.
And they were dominating in different areas and strategy than what the judo guys were doing. And so my grandfather started taking notes. And he took those notes and went back to Japan with those notes and sort of preached that we need to integrate some of these moves into our judo. you know, and in order for us to get better, we've got to get better. Excuse me. So he preached that, you know, we should include, probably one of the first ideas of just being a mixed martial artist. Judo isn't everything. You need to learn wrestling. You need to learn boxing. You need to learn karate. You need to be fully rounded in all martial arts. But that was frowned upon. Judo is the ultimate sport. We don't need to follow any other sport. We're doing fine on our own. If that's what you believe, you should probably go somewhere else. Excuse me. So he did. He went and he started wrestling in Japan. And he started at the high school and collegiate level. And then that's where my father got involved.
Okay.
So, excuse me. So they were my father did judo as a child all the way up. And then he started wrestling. My grandfather started training all these wrestlers. They started getting really good and becoming national champs. And then he started in his first initial tour, and then subsequently after that, he started making trips back to the United States. But he had made friends with a few of the university ADs or some of the coaches that were coaching in throughout the states. And so one of them was this coach named Myron Roderick at Oklahoma State. He had made good friends with him, and they came up with this idea of, hey, why don't you bring some of your Japanese guys and we can get them into school. They can help us out. They were the number one team in the country at that point. I think they had won, 10, 15 national titles in a row.
An absolute dynasty.
100%.
I mean, that for
before Iowa was on the scene, it was Oklahoma State, then Iowa State, and then Iowa. But Oklahoma State really ran the gamut for a long time. And some of that was, in fact, due to my grandfather importing a lot of these guys. So I think my uncle, Masaki, was the first batch that came over in 1959 or 60. And then I think my dad came over in 61. This wrestler, Yojiro Yutake, came over. He ended up being a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and a 3-time national champ because you only wrestled 3 years back in those days. And he's, I think, been voted one of the best wrestlers of that decade. And so that's how my father came to the United States. So in short, my grandfather came on a judo tour, learned wrestling from the wrestlers, and then went back to Japan and just started teaching it there. And then I think I get the years wrong, but when he started, I think they told him it would take him like 10 or 15 years to field a strong enough Olympic team. And I think in 2 Olympics, he had a gold medalist, and then in 1965 he had 3 gold medalists.
Wow!
And the Japanese team, I think, ended up winning the Olympics that year. So he did the same thing. He just put everything into it and ground it out and did all the hard work. And now he's known as sort of the grandfather of Japanese wrestling. Mm-hmm. And then he left his mark here in the U.S. too by bringing those guys over, and a lot of them stayed and coached, and it helped, I think, bring that foreign aspect to it, that it wasn't so taboo. And this was in the early 60s too, so it wasn't too long after the war.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, to think about that, that's a completely different way to look at it. Yeah. It's so interesting how that happened, and how and through that, pretty much I would have to imagine meshed almost a unique different style also.
Yeah,
right? I mean, it had a judo driven foundation, right?
Yeah, and judo is not just also like about throws and trips, but like that did sort of work its way into the repertoire and technique of the wrestlers, but it's also hand fighting and locks and grips and submission holds that can be used in wrestling to turn opponents or things of that nature. But I think that changed a lot of just different styles that were being used. And Oklahoma State at that time, too, was a completely different style. They were take them down, let them up, take them down, let them up. And they actually had to change NCAA rules because of that to try to slow them down. So my dad wrestled in an era where the first takedown was 2 points. Every takedown after that was only 1 point. But escapes were still 1 point. So if you took a guy down and then you let him up, it was 2-1. If you took him down and let him up again, it was 3-2. So you were never going to gain anything more than 1 point on this guy every time you took him down and let him up.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, when you dominate, someone's going to come and change the rules.
They change it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They changed the entire way scoring was done based off of their style of wrestling. So your dad goes on. He's a NCAA champion, correct, for
Yes.
Oklahoma State. Wrestled in the Olympics.
No, he didn't wrestle in the Olympics. He had the opportunity to in '65 when the Japanese team did really well that year. But he and his father had a falling out.
Okay.
I'm sure we've all been in situations like this where, I mean, I was in the same situation with my dad in high school, where I think you blur that line between coach and father.
Yes.
And at some point they didn't see eye to eye. And I think in my dad's, act of spite towards his father, he's like, I'm not going to wrestle for you. Whether or not that was the right decision, it's up to him to decide. But I think the guy that won that year was from Japan. So he did not wrestle, but I think taking from that, he ended up being a coach. And so my grandfather, who was the vice president of FILA at the time, Mexico was fielding a team for the first time in Mexico City for the Olympics in 72. And so my father was the Mexican wrestling coach because they needed a coach.
They need a coach.
And so my grandfather told him to get down there, learn Spanish, and coach them in their first Olympics. So.
Wow, that's really cool. What a story. So he had to learn Spanish, obviously. Imagine that experience.
I think he speaks Spanish probably better than he does English at that point. But I mean, he's one of those guys, that I think we were talking earlier about this, like Dave Schultz, where it's like if he doesn't know something, he's going to go learn it. So he's a consummate learner. He studied. I mean, I think he knows partial languages of about 5 or 6 other. He can speak Spanish. He knows a little bit of Italian. He knows Turkish. He knows Russian. He knows a little bit of all these, and obviously Japanese and English. But he taught himself those things. He picked those things up to just further, his repertoire. So,
Yeah.
So I learned from him, but I only know English. So.
I was thinking back this morning, and it's funny how my memory comes back when I focus in on certain things. And here we are. I think it's 1988 or it's 1989, but it's somewhere in that time frame. We're at the St. Ignatius Matt Cat Open. You remember that one?
I remember the Matt Cat. Yeah, there was a CYO tournament, wasn't it?
We were there wrestling from the North Akron Wrestling Club. So we were there. And I think I wrestled you. Because at first, through history, I was like, it was Robert. But it couldn't have been Robert because of the age group.
You would have been a freshman in high school, yeah.
So
yeah, I wrestled.
It was you.
It might have been my last match my 8th grade year because I didn't wrestle. I wrestled freshman year. My dad started the program at our high school. It was based off of Elyria Catholic, which was like our feeder grade school, went into that. And so he started that program basically for my brother. My brother wanted to wrestle in 7th grade. When I was in 7th grade, he was in 8th grade. So I wrestled in 7th grade, and then 8th grade, because he wasn't there and I didn't know if I really wanted to wrestle, I think I lost like 4 matches, maybe won 1, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And my dad wasn't coaching full time because he was now at St. Ed's coaching and helping my brother out. So I was like, this sucks. And so I quit.
Did you?
And it might have, and the last time I wrestled was at St. Ignatius.
Well, you beat me. You beat me. I do remember that. But here's what I remember even more was your dad had a stand-up. He was selling books, and he had pamphlets for his camp. And I was like, I was so nervous to wrestle you because here the awards is like this long of a list. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to wrestle this, Olympic coach's kid. Like,
you got psyched out, man.
I completely psyched
I was
myself
probably
out.
Terrible. I'd wrestled for a year and you just saw the kid with the new shoes on. You're like, oh my God, that guy's got to be good. He's got Nikes on. Look at those things.
I was having that conversation with my son. I said, when we were kids, we used to look at the kid's shoes and it would start playing in our mind if he was good or not.
He had and then if the kid had high tops on the mat, you're like, I'm gonna kill this kid.
I'm gonna kill him.
And
I don't think I ever lost anybody with high tops.
No, you shouldn't.
Shouldn't
It's a shame.
I wanted to bring that up because we're talking about your father, and you said something though that it stuck with me though about that coach-father relationship. and I see it today, being in the sport again with my son. And there's a lot of coaches out there and a lot of dads out there. And I want to talk about that balance. I want to talk about that balance because it's so hard being a dad and a coach at the same time. And it's easy to cross the line. And I talk to so many guys who are like, my son quit. I pushed him out of the sport. I own it. I drove him too hard, or I wasn't a dad when I needed to be the dad. Tell me about the experience you had, because here you are. You've got this dad who's in a Hall of Fame. If it was football, he'd be in Canton, right? He'd have a jacket. But wrestling's not football. But right. If it was, that's the pedigree. How was that interaction? How was that culture at your home growing up?
I think my mom had a pretty good grasp on it because she obviously, was around before we were, so she had experienced that lifestyle, and she knew she never played sports at a competitive level, but she knew what environment my father was in with athletes at that highest level. So she understood, I think, what could happen to a child who's just forced into a sport that they're constantly surrounded by. So she made a point that we didn't wrestle until it was our decision to wrestle. So we did soccer all through childhood. We did judo, I think starting at like 7 to like 13. We played football in grade school. And then my brother, like I mentioned before, he's the one that's like, I want to wrestle. So my dad started the team. But my dad he was a soccer coach, growing up, and, I'm sure he helped out with all the other teams, but those were team sports. So when they're yelling like go team or push forward or whatever, everyone's doing this, whatever. But with wrestling, it was like, it's just you and this other person, individual instruction. And I don't know, it must have been maybe I took it again for probably my junior, I think my senior year is when it crested, because a couple things I think came into play. One, I was the only child because my brother and sister were out of the house, so it was just me at home. So now, all the focus was on me.
Yeah, the light is on you. Yeah.
It was my last chance to do something, and I had hopes that I could accomplish something. And I was the last member of my family, I think, to have that opportunity, because my brother competed the year before at the state tournament, but didn't necessarily perform as best he could. So I felt a lot of pressure, not just in that finality of everything, like I got to do it, it's my senior year, but I also felt, like you said, that other eyes watching you, like, oh, you're this Olympic coach's son, you should be a good wrestler, you should win, and so I grew up with that feeling of, like, I remember even in college when people are like, what are your goals? I'm like, I want to be an All-American like my father and hopefully a national champion. I was probably just saying that because that's what I felt I wanted to do. But obviously as I got older, it was just like, I don't think I was even close to accomplishing some of those things because I wasn't working as hard as I should have. But I also had other interests that took away from that main focus.
Right.
And I don't regret any of it. But I think at that time I was just saying it because that's what the pressure was there to, you're going to go to the Olympics too?
Right.
Like, yeah,
right.
I'm going just like my dad,
Sure.
But when you get that personal, I think what you're talking to of wrestling with these dads and these coaches of, there's a hard line when you're a child and someone's yelling at you that is your family member, that is your father, than some other kid's father. And whether they're doing it because they're trying to encourage you, or they're upset with you, or they're trying, to correct your mistakes, there is that thing of, I've let my dad down versus, I've let my coach down. So, or when he's yelling at you and you can see the anger in his eyes, you look at like your dad yelling at you like that versus your coach yelling at you. So that to me blurred those lines. And then it doesn't stop at practice. It carries home, so you're having these conversations in the car, or you're having conversations, at dinner. And so those moments, I felt like I literally told him that I didn't want him in my corner anymore my senior year. And I think I brought him back into my corner, I think maybe in the sectional tournament, definitely for the state tournament. I think it started at the sectional tournament. But I halfway through the season, he had said something. I think it might have been, I lost a couple times that season. And I think one of those earlier losses, he was in my corner and he had yelled at me or something, and I lost the match and I came off, and I remember telling him, I don't want you in my corner anymore. I went and told the coaches, and I'm like, I don't want him in my corner anymore. And they were all like, whoa. But they cared more about how I was going to perform and how I was going to be more comfortable. So they put 2 other coaches. So I had Joe Silvestro and John Heffernan in my corner every match. And then I think it was the state tournament maybe before I brought my dad in. And I told him, I was like, I matured enough to where I realized what I had. I had an Olympic coach in my corner. And how was I going to deny that, in the most important tournament in my life at that point, even if he was my father? And I didn't, the guy's the most knowledgeable person I know in this sport. It would be foolish of me not to have him in my corner. And I also didn't want to take that away from him too, if I did win, that he wasn't a part of it.
He wasn't there.
Yeah. So I made a turn there, but there was a moment for about 4 months that senior year where I had no coach wrestler relationship with him. It was just strictly parent.
It's so tough because it's being in this situation now. My kid's just in youth wrestling. It's but I still see it's now I try to take back seat. I want to be back seat, but at the same time, when you see things not going as they should, do you step up? Do you make a comment? Do you say, hey, if you did this, maybe you should look at it this way? And that's what's so hard. That's that balancing act.
Well, I think if you do get to that point where maybe you do cross the line, or you do yell at a point where you feel like you're yelling at him like a wrestler and you're not seeing him as a son,
right? You
got to take a step back and you got to realize what he's seeing. And sometimes it is apologizing. Like, I didn't mean to yell at you or say like what I was, but you got me all fired up because I was trying to coach you, blah, blah, blah. But I'm so proud of you as your father, and have that conversation so they don't get confused by the blurred lines.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we put ourselves in the other person's shoes, our kids' shoes, other people's shoes, we see it and it's like, oh, how would I feel? How would I,
well, they look, I'm sure your son looks at you like as a superhero, and everything you say and do is great. And so if he doesn't do something that pleases you, or he sees something that maybe you were upset that he did, it's how he's going to react. Like you said, some people are like, well, I'm quitting. And it's not that they don't like the sport, it's they don't like the reaction that they get from someone that should be supporting them. So if I did something and I see my dad and he's screaming, and I don't want to upset him anymore, so I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And the parent thinks they don't want to wrestle. No, they don't want to deal with what wrestling brings.
Yes.
Right.
It's not, and that's the thing too. It's not a fun sport to begin with.
Yeah. Let's face the facts. Yeah.
But let's try to make it better and more fun if you want these kids to be a part and stay with it. And I think another thing, like I mentioned before, is that get them into multi-sports. Don't focus them on one. I mean, there's proof of multi-sport players in the pros that will tell you, Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson are prime examples of, they were almost pro baseball players.
Sure.
And think of their arms and the leg in the game now, and how their passes are completely different than your standard, even Tom Brady. He's the best quarterback out there, but Patrick Mahomes has a completely different style and can do things because of baseball, not because he's stuck strictly with one sport. So I think that's also a good mind cleanser. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, they probably will have to choose one to focus on. But until that point, I'm a firm believer of trying to get them involved in as many different, soccer for me. I played soccer until I was senior in high school, and it was great for my footwork and my stamina.
Yeah.
So
you guys were never tired.
Yeah. It was
with all that.
It was like preseason training for wrestling, really.
I don't think you could get better preseason training, right? That's awesome. Man, that's a really good thing. And yeah, it's good that you guys kind of bridge that gap, and then you, obviously the end result was you winning the title that you had been going after. So after college, you wrestle at Penn, and then you go out to LA, right? And you spend some time there, and you've done so much, already. Like, I was looking over your portfolio of the film and the things that you've done and the projects that you've done. and I think everyone has, Foxcatcher was such a big thing, right? And the movie came out first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've all seen, for the most part, I'm sure most of the audience has seen the movie where Steve Carell plays John DuPont, and
Channing Tatum
plays Mark Schultz.
Mark Ruffalo plays Dave Schultz. Sienna Miller played Nancy Schultz. It was a very artistic, good film. The director, he had done great movies, won Oscars before, and this was even Oscar nominated. But it just wasn't the real story. It wasn't the true story. It was an amalgamation of a couple stories put together. But they had the money and they had the wheels spinning already, so they were much faster in delivering than we were at that time.
So I read also that story was actually written for Mark Schultz, not Dave Schultz. It was
Well, it was actually Mark Schultz's story.
Okay, Mark Schultz's story.
So after Dave died, Mark went and wrote sort of this book, manifesto, mission statement, or whatever, manuscript. And I think he tried to shop it around for a bit, and it just never got really picked up. And then I think Bennett Miller got his hands on it, and he wanted to do it for a while, but Nancy, the widow, didn't want to do anything until John DuPont was dead and was passed. And so he passed away, I think in 2010, and shortly after, or even before that, they jumped on making the film. And then when that was going, I contacted my dad to let him know, hey, they're doing a feature film on Schultz and all this stuff. And he had already actually been contacted by some of the guys. And he was like, yeah, well, Nancy's doing a documentary on it. And so that's what really sparked my interest, because I felt what I was doing in reality television at that time was much more, I could sidestep easier into a documentary, because that's what I was basically doing versus a scripted feature film.
Right.
So we got involved in that, and it turned out to be a great project.
Unbelievable project. Can you give a 30-second recap of John DuPont, of who he was? And
he was many things, but
right.
He was a billionaire philanthropist from the DuPont family. That's famous and known for their Corningware and all their Teflon and stuff like that. But he got involved. He had a lot of money, and he got involved with USA Wrestling in sponsoring athletes and the sport of wrestling. He was a big philanthropist in other sports. He sponsored the pentathlon and swimming. He had facilities all over this 1,000-acre ranch farm that he owned or was passed down from generations of his family. And he created a wrestling facility on this farm called Foxcatcher. And he started recruiting and paying wrestlers stipends to live and train on his farm in this state-of-the-art facility. And he was able to bring in the best of the best. And actually the U.S. went from being second place for years to Russia to being the number one team in the world for that 4 or 5 year span that he was sort of in charge. So he infused a lot of money into the program, but then he also had his demons that he was wrestling with, and they ended up sort of taking over, and he ended up killing and murdering Dave Schultz, who was an Olympic gold medalist in '84 that was brought onto the farm to sort of help recruit and train and teach and sort of lead Team Foxcatcher.
Right.
So it became this big, catastrophe that affected, a lot of people in the wrestling world, because he was, so well respected. But it really affected a lot of us, me personally, and my teammates, because Foxcatcher was right on our camp, like 15 minutes from our school. And a lot of the reasons that all of us sort of went to Penn was because of Foxcatcher being so close, but also because of Dave Schultz being the leader of Foxcatcher. So, and then Dave was a family friend of ours, my father's and my mom's. And he and his wife used to babysit my brother and sister and I when we were kids and before they had kids. So he was also a strong, sort of impetus for me going there and having sort of an uncle to sort of, if anything went wrong, I could give him a shout and he could help me out. So it was tough when that happened, because it happened at the end of, or I guess middle of my sophomore year.
Is that okay?
It
was right then.
Yeah, it was January of '96.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's coming up. January 26th is same day that Kobe passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, many years later.
Right. Yeah. So John DuPont passes. You connect with Nancy Schultz, and she wants to do the documentary.
Yeah, so she wanted to do the documentary and tell the real story, so we helped raise the money for that. And the best thing was we got all of the guys that we went to college with to help finance the film, because they were very successful in what they were doing now in Wall Street and wanted to sort of diversify their lives and portfolios. They were all there. They were all there. They knew Dave. They were all friends of, the Foxcatcher program when we were training. And we were all affected by it. We were wrestling Cornell that day that Dave got shot, and they didn't tell us until after the match. And they gathered us all around and, told us the news. We even had the memorial for his funeral at our gymnasium. And our coach was best friends with him at the time. Wow. So, yeah, it really hit us hard. So it was a great thing to see everyone sort of step up and be like, we got to tell this story. It's a great story, So we got it done, and it was well received, and we almost won an Emmy, but just sort of being recognized and, having a platform like Netflix to show, the film it's been great,
It's such a great film, man. And I watch it, and what you don't realize until you watch it and really pay attention is how DuPont, I don't know if he was bipolar, but he definitely was struggling with some demons. And sometimes he was like really happy, but sometimes he was really, you could tell, in a dark place. And it was kind of, it was weird to watch. There's just that part of it. But you guys did such a great job of showing the story and how it worked. And it was pretty amazing. Now, you were you visited Foxcatcher. Like you were there. Did you meet DuPont?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's when you're going onto a place like that. At that time, too, he also had security everywhere, armed security, guys with guns. So it was kind of like walking sort of like around the White House. He had ex-Secret Service guys as his security. So, again, like you said, he was going through some either bipolar, dementia. There's definitely drugs involved. And so he just was. My first encounter with him was my father telling me, be careful around this guy. Don't make eye contact with him. I mean, he's a billionaire guy that owns this whole thing. Just stay out of his way. Don't be, a little kid running around doing stupid stuff. Just be aware. And so we get ready to work out in the gym, and you'd see him changing, and you just ignore him and just go do your thing. But then there'd be instances where like he would just show up and do things. I remember one time we were at Dan Shade's house, and he was having a barbecue, and DuPont just showed up with his security guy, and he got out, and he sort of was uncomfortable because everyone was having fun and blah, 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 and he was just kind of standing around on the outside. And then he staring up in the trees, and the trees were blowing in the wind, and he went to a security guy's holster, pulled out his gun, and starts pointing it at the trees. And he's like, somebody's up there in those trees. Someone's watching us. And my dad was like, see, this guy's... And so he was, potentially going to fire. And
he's got a firearm in his hand.
Yeah. And well, my dad's biggest thing, he's like, what if there was a kid up there hanging out in the tree? Just joking around or climbing the tree or blah, blah, blah. Like,
because there was kids there, right?
All over the place. And so those were other elements that I just would hear or see him. But you also heard stories. You heard from everyone that came in. And like as those stories in the film were sort of spiraling, you would hear those. Like when he went to Dave's house and said that Shade had beat him up, and he was armed with a rifle, and Dave took the gun from him, and he fell and bruised his face. And then he said that, Dan Shade had beat him up. I saw Dave with my family like 2 days after that incident happened. And he told my parents that story. And my mom was like, what are you doing? You guys can't have guns around. He's like, no, he's harmless, blah, blah, blah. He's, a month later, he was dead.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So, I had read in another interview you did that you compared him to Montgomery Burns.
Yeah.
From The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote.
Yeah, well, he was one of those guys. He wanted to be a wrestler. He wanted to be a world champ. He was surrounded by these beastly men, and so he would get on the mat and roll around with them. But he was as frail as could be, and he had no muscle tone. But he was so powerful in that area with his money that he could do anything. I mean, the guy had a helicopter. He had a tank. He would the Philadelphia Police Department would come and use his shooting range for target practice. So, he drove his car into this lake twice, a brand new car, like random things. So when I saw, and physically he looked like Mr. Burns. He's this gray, crotchety, bent over, kind of old man. So that was my sort of incarnation of who he was.
So that was such a great, like you guys, the attention to detail on that with all the video and just like that's what made it so great. Like, and then telling that story with it. So you did that, and then Angle is about to come out, right?
Yeah, we sold the documentary on Kurt Angle, his life, to the WWE. So that should be coming out, I think, next year, hopefully in the spring. I know they release a bunch of documentaries on A&E. They did like Rowdy Piper and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Booker T and Macho Man. They did a whole bunch of docs on their library of wrestlers, and I think this is going to come out in their next batch. So fingers crossed it'll come out maybe in April of next year.
Okay.
But it's great. I was telling you, is like, I think that this film is even better than Foxcatcher. Not necessarily the story, because I don't think you can beat a story like that, but it's got, there is death, there's drugs, there's winning, there's Olympics, there's pro wrestlers, there's, we got celebrities in this film. We've got action, comedy, some of the things that the story of Foxcatcher just wasn't funny,
right?
But the WWE and Kurt's character and him messing with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve, like that, those are funny moments. And then his journey, he broke his neck 5 times, and he developed an opioid addiction that was ghastly. I mean, he was doing like 75 pills a day.
Oh my gosh.
And it just got out of control. But, he's doing great, and the film looks fantastic. And like I think you said before too, of like just grinding out, that's what he's going through every day. He is uncomfortable, but he's got to find some sort of comfort in his uncomfortableness, because he's just got pain he's dealing with daily. So it's really the story of a fighter. So it's great. I can't wait for everyone to see it.
It is unbelievable. I mean, like, it blew my mind. You showed it to me. It was so good. And, to have it all, to lose it all, right, in that story, and to get back on the horse again, right?
Yeah.
And go get it.
Yeah, it's just one step at a time. And the thing is, too, is like you look at someone like that and you're like, oh, well, he was an Olympic gold medalist. He could do it, blah, blah, blah. It's like anyone can do it. You just got to keep fighting. You can't stop. It's especially when dealing with addiction. It's it's for the rest of his life, and it's every single day. And I think that was also a big part of telling that story, too, is, getting that out. That's a big problem that we're dealing with now with addiction and overdosing. And so if we can help spread that word that there is help out there, that, sobriety, can be found, then that's what we want to do, and Kurt's a great sort of spokesman for that too.
Yes.
He went through some crazy things in his life, and he's not special. He's just a fighter. Yes, he is special, but he won't say that. He's just, every day he just pushes through, and that's what we got to do.
He is a fighter, and we can all learn so much from him. So that is going to be so great when it comes out. I'm excited for that one. And then, you've done so much. I was just looking at the other thing, like going on site. I went online and I found this quote. You actually have quotes on a quote website, but it was a quote, and it was about, and I got to ask you what show it was from, because it didn't tell me what the show was from. As soon as medical tests came back.
Oh, that was from The Bachelor.
I found this quote online. So as soon as medical tests came back, you had to tell them that they couldn't be on the show, right?
Yeah, for The Bachelor, I think the context of that was like, what are some of the weird things that happened and during the casting process, and that was something that I'd never been a part of, and all of a sudden we're, testing for diseases and all these things so these people can live in a house together and date each other and hopefully eventually marry each other. So they had to go through this whole regimen of things, and just like that, we had all the girls' pictures, faces on the walls, of like, who we think our top 25 women are going to be, and then, the extras down below and blah, blah, blah. And then the medical test would come back. And then you'd take these red stickers and you'd put it on the people that didn't pass their medical exam, for one reason or another. And it was usually the ones at the top, which was scary. It was an eye-opener, But then we were the ones that were forced to go and tell these people, you've been talking to them for months and weeks at a time, and getting them all prepped. You're going to be great. The guys going to love you, blah, blah, blah. You're so fun. And then you have to call them and be like, you can't be on the show. And they were like, why? And I'm like, well, you should probably call your doctor.
That's all you could say.
You can't get
right, because you've got HIPAA.
Right. So it was embarrassing, I think, for both of us in the sense that like this person that you've been dealing with, stranger kind of in your life, and now all of a sudden he knows your medical history and why you can't be a part of the show before you do. And he's the one telling you, like, you should go call your doctor. And so I always just felt bad because I always imagine what those people would be like when they called their doctor and then like, oh my God, there's 12 other people that know about this.
Yeah. Getting comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yes. Well, that is true. That's part of producing. There's a lot of uncomfortable things I've had to do or get other people to do, and you've got to go in there and, be confident.
So what do you say? So pretend I'm one of the contestants. Why? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, what's that conversation? Like, because that had to be so foreign at first. Like, okay, I got to tell her that she can no longer be on the show. I just got to do it very straightforward. Be direct and say I can't say anymore. Was it like that?
Yeah. I mean, for that too, you already know that you're probably never going to see this person again anyway because they were trying to be on, it's like a job audition.
Sure.
So it's not like firing someone. It's just telling them that they didn't get the job. So you've got to go in it like that, wherein it's just like, well, I can't really go into more about it. You should probably deal with this and blah, blah, blah. But if you did make friends with this person, which does happen after, months of talking with someone, it is that awkwardness of like, I can't send them an email, or they do email you back and they're like, what happened? I thought everything was going great, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything else that can be taken care of? And you're just like,
you told me I was the perfect fit.
So interesting you found those quotes.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was like, I got to ask him about this. So good stuff. So I get to hang out with Ben today, and we're going to go watch some wrestling. And what else are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on a great project with you. My next doc is going to be on the St. Edward Walsh Jesuit rivalry that took place between the years of like 89 and 98, that decade of dominance of, two Ohio teams basically sort of running it through the rest of the country. But how St. Ed's sort of set that dynasty, and then, these group of badass wrestlers, Roughnecks, came in and disrupted the system, with you and Billy and the Bad Boys. So I want to do sort of an anthology series of those 10 years. And I know that we're going to go watch this doc, Men of Iron, that Rudis Plus did of the Walsh Jesuit Warriors and how Bill Barger put that team together. But I think ours is going to go into much more detail and have all those players that were there, the young men that took part in all those battles, and sort of lay it all out in that story of those 10 years that took place, and the things that happened each year that was different. It was a different lineup of men against men, and people got hurt, people got kicked out of school, people transferred in from other states, and kept adding to the different sort of texture of what the battlefield looked like every year. And so it was, I think it's a great story. I think it's fun that you and I were part of it, and I think that it's going to be fun that you and I put this together.
It's going to be a blast.
It's going to be awesome.
We're going to relive some fun days, some glory days, but at the same time put together a story that hopefully is extremely attractive, and I'm sure it will be with your track record, man. It's so awesome to have you on today.
Thank you, man. I'm so glad and proud of what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you.
It's great to be a part of, and like you said, you keep grinding, and good things will happen.
Good things happen. Be a fighter, right? Be like
That's right.
Angle.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Good stuff, my friend. Till next time, everyone.
Thank you.